Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Monday. Welcome to a brand new week. Welcome to today's edition of Take 5. Hope you had a great weekend. I hope you're making plans to have an even greater week this week. Now, usually we break down the message that I preached on Sunday, but since I didn't preach this weekend and we had visiting speaker missionary Christian Stanley with us, I'm not going to try to break down everything that we heard from him and what God's doing in his ministry. I've got something else that I just kind of feel like that's necessary for me to share with you this week. Now, we have learned that God uses the rough seasons of life to advance His will for us and bring us into promotion. There really is a purpose for every season of life. Good, bad, or in between, there's a purpose for it. God uses them all. And I want to be careful when I say what we're going to talk about this week because I don't want to undo what we've just learned. However, I think that in order to bring balance to this idea, we have got to ask this question: are all storms necessary? Now, we know without a doubt that God uses the storms of life to try our faith and to strengthen us and to move us forward, sometimes into places we wouldn't ordinarily go without them. But we're also going to have to admit that there are some storms that we just probably should not have gone through. God absolutely does order storms for our life, just like He orders our steps. But there are some that we bring on ourselves because of bad decisions that we make. So this week I want to examine the Scriptures and see what the Bible has to say about unnecessary storms. I got 4 things I want to show you this week that prove we bring some storms on ourselves. Most of them are going to come from Acts 27, so that might be some good reading for you this week. Today's just an introduction to get our minds going in that right direction. Now, Peter really gives us our first clue as to the fact that some storms may not be necessary. When you look at 1 Peter chapter 5, verse number 7, we find these words: "By God's power we are being guarded through faith for a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. In this we rejoice." We rejoice in what God's going to do, right? We rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, we are grieved by various trials for the testing of our faith. Did you hear what he said? If necessary, we are grieved by various trials for the testing of our faith. When he says if necessary, that leads me to believe that there might be some storms that aren't necessary. When it comes to storms, there seems to be some things that we won't learn and can't learn without a storm. They have a way of teaching us things that we can't and won't learn any other way. They're a necessary part of life, but apparently there are some that we could avoid if we would just listen and obey and use our brain and think soberly. I want to pull from Acts 27 a storm in the life of the Apostle Paul. He's being transported from Jerusalem to Rome on a grain ship with prisoners, and he ends up in a terrible storm. And I want to read a portion of this, kind of lengthy, but I want to read a portion of this just to set our mind thinking the way we should for this coming up week. So this is what Luke says: "We made slow headway for many days and had difficulty arriving off Cnidus. When the wind didn't allow us to hold our course, we sailed to the lee side of Crete. We moved along the coast with difficulty and came to a place called Fair Havens near the town of Lasea. Much time had been lost, and sailing had already become dangerous because by now it was after the Day of Atonement. So Paul warned them, 'Men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to the ship and the cargo and to our own lives also.' But the centurion, instead of listening to what Paul said, followed the advice of the pilot and the owner of the ship. Since the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, the majority decided that we should sail on. So when a gentle south wind began to blow, they supposed that was their sign, and they weighed anchor and began to sail. Before long, a hurricane-force storm called a northeaster came down on them, caught the ship in the storm so that they could not make headway, and they were driven along. The men hoisted the lifeboat aboard to secure it, and they passed ropes under the ship to hold it together because they were afraid they would run aground. They took such a violent battering from the storm that they began to throw cargo overboard. On the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. And when neither sun, moon, nor stars appeared for many days, and the storm continued raging, we finally gave up all hope of being saved. After they had gone a long time without food, Paul stood up before them and said, "Men, you should have taken my advice and not sailed from Crete. Then you would have spared yourselves this damage and loss." Don't you love those kind of people? Those "I told you so" kind of people? Well, that's what Paul was doing. He had told them, we don't need to do this. If we do, we're going to get in trouble. Now they are in trouble, a storm like they've never seen. And Paul said, you should have listened. This could have been avoided. Without a doubt, when you read this passage, you learn that there are some storms that we can avoid and should avoid. It's kind of foolish to go into something when you don't have to. Proverbs says this, wise people see trouble coming and get out of the way, but fools go straight into it and suffer for it. Hey friends, stick around with me this week. We're going to learn some valuable things about avoiding the unnecessary storms of life that come from the bad decisions that we sometimes make. Hey, I hope you have a great day today. I look forward to being with you right here tomorrow on Tuesday's edition of Take 5. Until then, God bless you. Make right choices, my friend, and have a great day.